Well, hello, everybody. My name is Miriam O'Gara, and this is Writer's Block. Today, I am so delighted to have with me Ambassador Sujay, Reverend Dr. Suzan D. Johnson-Cook, and she's a very special woman indeed. She has written 14 books. She is the first female New York City Police Department chaplain, and she held the position for 21 years, including during the time of 9/11. She's the first African-American lady to hold the position of Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, and under President Barack Obama, she was awarded that position. But she has also served another president, President Bill Clinton, on which she was White House Staff Fellow and advised on domestic affairs. And I'm just so delighted to have her on today to talk about her 2 books published this fall. My fabulous 5th chapter. It's my turn now, and it is. And also Rhythms of Rest, a completely different style of book, but both books extremely appropriate for the times that we're in right now. So, Reverend Dr. Suzan D. Johnson-Cook, you are very welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I am delighted to be here. As you were talking, I said my title is long and my names are long. So you know what? I'm supposed to be here for a long time with you.
Oh, well, and there's more. You are America's Queen of Inspiration. There are so many titles.
Yes, and I love it. And I think coming out of this pandemic, the world needs some inspiration, you know?
Oh, my gosh.
Coming out of 9/11, it was a time when the world needed inspiration. And now this is a global pandemic. And so what the world needs now, you know, the song says love, sweet love, but we also need some inspiration, sweet inspiration.
Absolutely. And you've had also some wonderful people inspire you, haven't you?
Oh, I really have. I've been so blessed. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we lost Colin Powell, and about a month before that, we did a memorial for Honorable Dave Dinkins, who was the first African-American mayor of New York. And I got to walk beside both of those men, you know, got to serve with Secretary Clinton, President Obama, President Clinton, and, you know, then my own parents who were not famous, but who were just such inspiring people that said, live life, and gave me the freedom to live life. And so I have been so fortunate, so blessed. You know, they've been the school of hard knocks, as they call it. You know, life is not always a bowl of cherries, but you know what? You spit out the pit and then you can eat the fruit.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And you know, we're going to focus first and probably mainly on my fabulous 5th chapter.
Oh,
this is a really marvelous book. I mean, I'm in my 5th chapter. I'm dealing with a lot of women now who are in their 5th chapter.
Yes.
And it is just stunning. And one of the things I loved about the book, one of the many things, is the way you take very relevant quotes from other works. Yes. You know, you find, you list some really appropriate reading for this phase of our lives. But you also, I mean, some of the sound bites are wonderful from the people you choose. I mean, you've got R.S. Gray, and the quote is, she believed she could, so she did.
Exactly. You know, and so people understand the 5th chapter is any number above the age of 50. When I was going around speaking, they would always have a holding room before you, or green room, they call it now. But you'd be in these libraries and there'd be these books by men, older men, about the second half of life, tackling and football. And I was like, none of them speak to me as a woman. And so this is for women and in your 5th chapter, any age over 50, boomers, to be happy with it so that the rest of your life will be the best and the most blessed of your life.
Yes, and you've reached people with this too, because, you know, the recommendations, you know, you've got ladies coming on saying how they felt when they read the book. They're saying in their recommendations, there's a Marion L. Hurd, and she's saying, you will write your own story with verve and zest. Read this book as a gift to yourself. And I agree with that totally. That's how I felt reading your book.
Well, thank you so much. And I think life should be a gift to yourself. You know, we as women care for so many children, parents in many cases, sometimes both at the same time, spouses. And my thing is, don't diminish that, but celebrate yourself, the woman who you are, and all the dreams you wanted to have, do them.
Yes.
So a group of my sister friends, which I talk about also having fabulous fifth friends, we went to see Tina Turner's play on Broadway this past Friday. And
Oh,
you know, Tina Turner could do it at 80 and have those legs moving. Proud Mary. So you be a proud whatever your name is, and you
yes.
keep it moving. You know?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you know, in COVID-19, you know, during this whole pandemic, we've really had to shake ourselves up a little bit. We've had to find ways to be creative. You know,
Yeah.
and you say it in this book, and it was the wake up moment when I was reading the first book that I read was My Fabulous Fifth Chapter, and you got to the pandemic very quickly, and you made the point that women are being creative, and they are more women are going into business, as you said, now as a result of this pandemic, and they're calling on their creative side.
Very much so. So I now founded also what's called the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, because
Yes.
African American women, Black women globally, there's been this wealth gap. But when we put all these women together, you know, you have women running mines in Africa and women creating businesses of every type. And COVID gave us a chance to say, who's the real me? What do I really want to do? And to take the time to reflect on how do I do it? And so coming out of COVID or this pandemic, you know, people are saying, I'm doing me. I know this is my lane. I know I do it well. And so I don't have to compete. I can really just be me and be creative. And so we're enjoying the journey. We've partnered with women across the water. So you're in Ireland and England. We have friends in Greek, the Greek House Davos women. And they're like, we want to be partners too. And that's what's happened. We're partnering across the globe with women in their fifth chapters and above. So I am so
Yes.
excited to really meet you. And this is just the beginning of what's going to be an awesome friendship.
Well, gosh, that's the sort of thing you pray for, isn't it? That's what you
Yes,
really want. That's proper bonding with people, and
yes,
that breeds creativity. And you know, in chapter 4 of the book, you make the point that this is the moment when when we all have to decide whether we accept the status quo, either the status quo that was and the one that's now evolving, that you
right.
want to be blind not to realize it's happening, you know.
Yes.
Are you going to be part of that is what we've got to ask ourselves. And I think most of us, particularly the women, have cottoned on to this very quickly. And they want to move forward. They
They
want to
want to
be
move
creative.
forward. And yeah, and you know, why not be free? That's what freedom is really all about. I think one of the best gifts my parents, two of the best gifts my parents gave me was financial freedom. They started a business in our home when I was 5 years old, struggled to get it on its feet, but it's now the longest running Black family owned business in New York City, 59 years old. But in doing that, I went to college without debt. I got checks to go to school. And I think there's a big difference in writing a check than having your hand out. And so they gave
Yes.
me financial freedom. So I'm not bogged down by student loans or any loans. So that was one. But they also gave me the freedom to fly. So at 14 years old, I'm in this private school, one of two Black kids in my class. But all the kids who studied French went to France. All the kids who studied Spanish went to Spain. And they're like, you're going. And so I come back a bilingual 14-year-old into New York just at the time the Latinization of America is happening. And so we
Yes.
have Puerto Ricanos whose mothers and fathers only speak Spanish, and you have their playmate who speaks both Spanish and English. And so you become an interpreter and a translator, not only of language, but of culture. This is how we do it in public school. This is what happens in the Bronx. This is what happens when you cross the bridge and you go into Harlem. And so you begin to be bilingual and global at 14. And so I knew coming back that there was more to life than just what was on my corner. And I lived in a great place. So it wasn't one of those depressed areas and you hear those stories. It was a wonderful upbringing, but I knew there was a world that I wanted to capture, conquer, and I was captivated by it. So now, look, I'm talking with Ireland, talking with Greek women, and that's what life is all about, that we cross the barriers. Who said there has to be a box? I don't even see a box. So people
Yes.
say, do you think outside the box? Where's the box?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're so right. You're so
Yeah.
right. And I'm sure looking back at those late teens, you'll see that's the beginning. You know,
Yeah.
the eureka moment when you were able to learn those languages and then very shortly after that be able to cross those divides, you
Yes.
know,
Wherever they were, because
wherever.
there are cultures that are different. I mean, they may speak English, but there are cultures that are different. There are classes that are different. And you have to know which room you're walking into. One of my sisters, Paula Giddings, wrote a book, When and Where I Enter. And you have to know where you're entering and what's necessary for the room you're entering. And are you prepared for the room you're entering? And so when you go in, it's not just sitting down, you know, having a seat at the table is important, but you have to look around and you have to understand as soon as you walk in, okay, I'm in a male dominated room, or I'm in a room where there's nothing but diplomats, or I'm in a room where they're the cabinet secretaries, and every one of those demands a different approach and a different response. And if you don't know that language, sometimes it's not spoken.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a look or
Yes.
a wink or just peering across the room. But if you don't know that language, you'll be lost.
Yes. Or a sensibility. Absolutely. And like, in your opinion, can that really be taught? Or is it something that's, you know, either in you that can be developed, or can it be taught? I don't know that it can, because I've noticed with teachers and lecturers, you'll have some who've been in that world for many, many years.
Right.
And they've not progressed and they've not developed the skills.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a combination. Like when you're a diplomat, they have the School of Foreign Service that they pull every ambassador into. Say you're going to China next week, and they have 6 different dialects, and they'll teach you those things. So it's protocol they can introduce you to. But as you say, there's some things that have to be acquired, and you have to be around enough people who have been around enough people for you to acquire it. You know, it's a taste.
Yes.
You have to know, you have to have good taste. You have to know how to dress, and you have to know what's the appropriate dress for that particular occasion, as you know. And so some of it, you know, I was just very fortunate again to have a mother who had an eye for fashion, and she knew what fashion for what occasion. And so when I went into the Christian ministry, I was like, I have to wear a black suit. And she was like, why? Like, you're going to wear color. And she got me these very tasteful outfits that were colorful and appropriate. And people were like, who is that? You know, who just came in the room? And I had male pastors who would write me notes saying, you really dress wonderfully. You know, can you share with my wife or share with my ministers, like where you shop? And so I think you acquire it, it's modeled for you in many occasions,
yes,
as my mother, but you have to be in certain rooms to understand why you're in those rooms and what to do.
And did you know very early on that you did want to become a pastor, that you wanted to be ordained? Was that something that you felt when you were much, much younger that was a road you would definitely take?
Well, you know, I was born into a family that was Christian, and so I was always in church. And for the Black church world, when I was growing up, it wasn't just our spiritual place. It was where the middle class was being developed. So we were sitting next to the first Black judges and the first Black doctors. And so it was also where I got my educational push. They sat in the pews with us and they were like, well, what college are you going to? I said, I'm just 5 years old. I'm just learning Dr. Seuss. And they were like, and what college are you going to? So success was poured into us. Failure was not an option. And so the church was always a very special place to me. I loved it. It was also our social life. When we had dances, the church would buy tables. And so we were next to our pastor and next to our father and our mother. And so it was this intergenerational thing where my spiritual world wasn't over here and my other life was over here. It was one.
It was one.
It was one. And so it was a long way of answering. At 13, I had an inkling that I wanted to do something in the church world. And I met the first woman minister ever. Her name is Dr. Katie Cannon. and she became known for womanist theology. And she was a guest in my parents' home where I spent my summers. And I knew there was something that kind of, quivered inside of me. But I was a normal teenager, partied, did double dutch, went on trips, slept over, had sleepovers. But I also knew there was something that the kids would call a little strange about me. Like I would stand out, and I knew that there was something great I was supposed to do. And so when I got to college, there was this major church, and the pastor is still alive now, but there was this church in Boston where all the college students were flocked to. And it was the first time I saw African Americans who were brilliant. We had astronauts, the late Ron McNair. We had astronauts and physicists and people who were brilliant, and we could bring all of our gifts to this church. So I was into drama, and so I could bring my theater into the church.
Yes.
And I saw brilliance, I saw being ourselves, and I saw spirituality all in one place.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is so rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. And about 60 of us who sang in this choir together became like leading pastors because of that experience. So I knew when I left college that it was just a matter of time before I was going to say yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, that is wonderful. That is just, I can just see how that was a eureka moment for you as well.
Yes.
You have in the book, you go through the different, you cover very well in short form the different stages that most women would go through, in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and then you come to the 5th chapter. And it's really, you're basically saying this is going to be a fabulous time. So seize the moment.
Mm-hmm. And I think because I also started my forward with acknowledging the fabulous women in my life who showed me how to do it in 70, 80. My mother died at 84, but she had a group of 80 somethings. They would party. I would come into their house and they would like lock the door because we're going to Atlantic City. And I was like, I came to visit you, but we're going to party. And they did that till the day they all passed. And so I saw fabulous women having fun. My household, my parents were, now I would call them socialites, because every Sunday was a different eclectic group of people. And they would say, go introduce yourself. So it wasn't about sitting on the side like a little wallflower. Go introduce yourself. And it turned out that some of those men at the time were assemblymen with my brother. He was the first Black assemblyman in the Bronx, who now became the leading senators and congressmen. So Charles Schumer, who you see on the news almost every night, Senator Chuck Schumer, was in my living room as an assemblyman. And so I got to see this evolution of people rise, and so I was surrounded by greatness, not knowing that was going to be the top leading senator of America, but knowing that if I engaged with the people in my parents' house, it was safe, number one.
Yes.
It was also going to be interesting and intriguing because these were minds that my parents invited into their house and they said yes. That meant it was okay to talk to them.
Someone's got to make this movie. Are you listening out there? But you talk about this, although you're going into it in maybe more detail here, but you do talk about this in the book, and you talk about giving yourself permission. You have to give yourself permission to enjoy this time.
Give yourself, it's an opening litany that I talk about. I give myself permission to have fun, to eat a piece of fruit. Like, it's not about asking, is it okay from someone at this stage? It's saying it is okay for me to go and put a bathing suit on and watch the waves splash. So I give this retreat every June. The only time we missed it was because of COVID last year. But I call it Selah by the Sea. And Selah is a biblical word that means pause.
Yes. Which we'll come to for your next book as well that we'll talk about. This is where the connect is between the two books.
Yeah, but my point was that for many women who first started coming, it was their first time in a bathing suit. It was their first time on the beach. And they were like, I'm having so much fun
Yeah.
just splashing. And I watched them like a proud mama saying, yes, enjoy it. And I think that's what I give myself permission is about. Nobody's caring whether you're wearing a 2 or a 22.
Well, this is it. And it's okay. You're reinventing yourself, but you're not really, because this is also what you deserve. It's what you should have been doing. Only naturally, we can't always do what we want to do, but it isn't something that is odd. It is something you deserve.
Exactly. I'm coming out. So that's the song those who were gay come out and use that song. But my thing is, I'm coming out. The real me is saying yes to whoever I am at this stage of my life. You know, it starts with in America, I don't know if you get it overseas, but we get an AARP card.
Now, that was very interesting. Tell us about that, because we don't have something like that over here.
Oh, well,
they don't have it in the UK either.
Okay, well, it's the largest advocate for older people who are seniors in America. So at the day you turn 50, I don't know how the US Post Office gets it right. They must hold it. And on the day of your birthday at age 50, it is in your mailbox. And it's a card. You get discounts to things. But what it says is you are officially starting your 5th chapter. And so that's the first sober moment, because you go through your 20s and 30s and you're like, oh yeah, in my 40s. And then it's sobering. You're like, dang, I am 50 years old. So that starts there. And then in America, you can start collecting Social Security at either 62 or 66, but you have to take Medicare at age 65. It is a medical program that is discounted for anyone 65 and older. So you've really paid into it all your life, but you claim it at 65. So at your 64th and 6-month birthday, when you're 6 months into age 64, you get this pink card that says your next birthday, you're eligible for Medicare. So between 50 and 64, you're like, okay, I'm dealing with my 50s, but the Medicare card says, dang, I am really a senior citizen. When did this happen? And then you start seeing on the buses, like I'm from New York, right? They never get up to give you a seat because it's 8 million people. So everybody's tired. But somehow when you get on the bus and you're in your 60s, everyone is saying, ma'am, would you like to sit?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I've been to New York a couple of times, so I can envisage this. I didn't know that. That's the power of it.
That means your behind is old. That means if they're offering you a seat and giving you permission to take their seat, that's like, and then you want to say, no, thank you. I really want you to keep that seat. But it's real. So those are the 2 sobering moments. But I end those 50s and 60s, I say, give yourself permission to have some real fun and let loose, or try a dream that you always dreamed of, but you thought you never had time to do.
That's the next thing I was just going to raise with you, because you pick out the importance of putting together a bucket list.
Yes.
And you may need to change the bucket list at 60, but have one in your 50s as well.
You know, have one in your 50s. So I'm going to just read the first 2 paragraphs. It's called A Litany of Self-Love. I give myself permission to be a woman who is grateful for every day and every chapter of my life. I give myself permission to be a woman who can still be wowed and who wows, to be loved, to forgive and be forgiven, to finally be free and mean it. And that's the thing, you know, like we don't harbor stuff anymore. Like you forgive, because if you hold that stuff too long after 50, you're going to either get sick or die, because stress has to go somewhere.
Yes.
And so, but if you learn how to release it and say, you know what, it really wasn't that bad. You know, I got over it. They got over it. And let's hug and make up. And if you kind of start living life like that, you live a lot longer, and you certainly live a lot more stress-free.
You do. Now, you also mentioned loss, and I know you found it very difficult when you lost one of your best friends, Yolanda
King. She was Martin Luther King's oldest daughter. And I'm in Atlanta right at this moment, and I miss her terribly. We were running partners. She certainly was more famous because of her father, but we learned how, I was a public figure, we learned how to protect each other and still have fun. So that the Martin Luther King's daughter still had to have an image, but Yoki or Yolanda, we could go to each other's hotel rooms and laugh and stuff our faces and giggle, and it was our time. And in her last year, we got to be on the same, we both were speakers, and usually you're in different cities, different towns. Her last year of life, we were in the same city 4 times, in the same hotel.
Yes.
Went to each other's 50th birthday parties. So it was sort of like the universe was giving us time together.
Absolutely.
Some special time.
And and it came very quickly after your 50th birthday, the loss, didn't it? Wasn't that right?
Literally a month after my celebration. And we're stuffing our faces because we both always had weight challenges. I won't say we had weight challenges. And so we like to eat. And so we had gone to this juicing bar. She had given me this juice vacation where all you could do was juice. I was like, I want a McDonald's burger and fries, okay? And so we're eating, like, we come out of this juice bar and I'm stuffing my face and we're giggling, saying, well, we'll lose the weight next week. And so our last memories were in my hotel suite. I had rented like one of the hotels, the whole floor, and I had all my friends to the after party. And so this is where we could really hang out. We didn't have to be public. We didn't have to take pictures, and we're laughing. And then the next week she's calling me saying, I'm getting ready to go back to California. And she was my youngest son's godmother. She was like, so what should I get Christopher? And I was like, you're such a good godmother. Come over the house and then go. And she says, no, I'm going to go. And that was her last trip. When she landed, she passed.
Oh, God.
She had just given herself permission. She was an actor. And she had just given herself permission to go to Hollywood and say, this is what I want to do, and made that decision, and short-lived. So that's why I say do what you want to do while you have the time.
Very important. So very, very important.
Yes.
And I suppose it was a wake-up call. It tends to be when we lose, people close to us, be it parents, be it, best friends.
Yes.
It really makes you feel how mortality is a very real thing.
Yes, yes.
And how important it is to start living life, and that your talents heal you and allow them to do it now so that you can move forward.
Yes, yes. And my book is also about faith. It's about, one of the scriptures says, live life and have it more abundantly. And so if we're going to live life, it is to have the abundant life, to really celebrate all of who we are while we can, with whom we can, and to celebrate yourself. To not neglect yourself for the sake of others. And I work with a lot of women who are caregivers, or who are what we call servant leaders. So they're heading nonprofits, they're heading hospitals, they're professors, they're heading churches, and all of that's good work, but it takes its toll and its toil. And so many of the women who started with me in ministry are literally dead because they didn't know how to take a break. There were no support systems when we began. And that's why I value my family so much. They were like, okay, you've been down at that church 14 hours. Come to your mother's table. We're going to eat some chicken and some greens, and we're just going to laugh. And there's a game that we call Bid Whist. It's a card game that a lot of people play. And we would it's intergenerational. They're like, come to mom's house, and just put your feet up and take a minute. And all of those things were kind of reminders to me that you have to stop sometime.
Yeah, and what you've touched on there, I worry about it right now, because in this pandemic, a lot of women and men, but women are throwing themselves into work online. They're throwing themselves into burning the midnight oil and losing exactly what you're talking about, which losing sense of time. I do it. 3 hours, 4 hours, 7 hours can be gone working on something online, when you really do need to get together with your family, get together with your friends, have a good laugh. Yes. Remember how to laugh, get together in prayer, get together spiritually, mentally, emotionally, be one, get together. But just keep an eye out for this I suppose you could say it's an inevitable situation. But at
Yeah,
the same time, we do have to watch ourselves right now, don't we? Because as much
me
as we
too.
want to move forward and we're restricted in how we can do it, we need to be together as well.
Yeah, it's so important. There's a word that I call boundaries. And
Yes.
I've learned, so I take weekends and Mondays off. Because I'm a speaker and I speak some Sundays, it means that I have to have a Sunday, a Sabbath day. So that for me is Monday. And some people get very upset, like they can't reach me. I'm like this Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And some things will have to wait. So if you email me Friday night at 6, you know that I'm gone. You won't hear from me until my next business day. And so what it does is it puts my life in a perspective. And if you respect my life, then you'll respect my boundaries. And so it's hard. And I have all my organizations take the summer off. Now you lose some business, but you know what? You'll be prepared for new business because you'll be strong and rested. And I really had to learn that word boundaries. Now I don't get invited every day. Like, I told Harlan, our publicist, who's wonderful. I'm like, block out
Yes.
Thanksgiving week and block out Christmas week because, he can keep us going. I said, next week, I'm taking all 5 days. And
Yes.
so I don't want anyone to call me, email me, text me. What are the other things? Link me in. I don't want any
Yes.
of that. And so it's like learning how you make the boundaries for yourself, but teaching others what makes you tick and what makes you sick,
And you're absolutely right, because I know Ireland would be a lot like the United States in that we do tend to send emails at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. But I know that with the clients I work with from Germany,
Yes.
from Denmark, they will not answer. From Spain, they will not answer business emails until the next working day. They operate very efficiently. Their economies operate very efficiently, particularly the
Yes.
German ones. But there is actually no way you'll get them to answer you after 9:30 at night. Sometimes after 7 o'clock at night, because
Exactly.
that's family time.
And it's sleep and rest time or recreation time.
Yeah.
And I've learned that the word recreation really means recreation, that you stop long enough so the creator can pour back into you that which you have poured into others.
Yes.
And that vacation means vacate the premises.
Very
There are a
good.
lot of people who talk about these staycations. I don't want to stay where I am because I'm going to keep doing what I do. Vacation means pack me up if I have to drive or fly or get on a train, but I have to change my location for a vacation. And then I learn how to rest. And the European countries get it so well with the siesta in the middle of the day.
Yes.
So when we have our little retreats, what I do is I block it out and I call it mush time. The M is for get a massage. U is sit under an umbrella. S is take your siesta if you want to take a little nap. Or H means hush time. I don't want to talk. And you choose within those 4 hours what you'd like to do. And it allows people to say, I'm not so programmed on this retreat that I leave here more exhausted than I came.
This is it.
Yeah. So if it's transformational and it's about wellness, then we have to help people to be well. And part of that is to stop. Just stop. And so people will come and they'll say the first thing, can I help you do something? No, thank you. You've invested your money. You've paid to come on a retreat. I have a staff. And if they're not doing what they're doing to help you rest, something's wrong. So I appreciate your offer, but no, thank you. For these 4 days, you're going to be pampered and you're going to have some fun.
That's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful.
So
I'm sure it's a shock to a lot of people's systems as well. And yet at the same time, one of the things I also loved about the book is that you go into a list of things that we have to embrace and give ourselves permission to do and think positively about. Like say, D is for digitize.
Oh, for the smart principles. Yes.
Yes. Grab hold of the divine power within you and learn to go digital and virtual.
Otherwise, you'll be left behind. This is a new day.
Yeah.
And if you can't Zoom or stream or any of that, you're going to be left behind. It's a new world.
E for energize. When you hold on to God, you will have the energy you need to go into this 5th chapter. Very, very good. And you go through S for strategize. Do not move forward without a clear plan. Now, you say organize yourself, that it's extremely important to do that. You make some very, very, very good points about this. Monetize as well. Give yourself permission to monetize.
Make some money, particularly if you've been in the nonprofit world so long. You know, somehow people say, I've taken this vow of poverty. Who gave that to you? Like, no, you want to buy things, you want to feed your family, you want to eat decent food, so monetize. But I was going to say about organize, for me, that also means decluttering, you know? So because I'm a paper keeper, but I know where every paper is when people need it. And my kids tease me about it, but when they need their diploma or their passport, I know where everything is. But I have to survey my room every now and then, and I have to look at these piles, and I have to say, you know what, I can't live like this. And so either throw some things out, consolidate, collaborate, or just throw it away, you know, and learning how to do that so that I can have some organization in my life.
Well, I know my parents died in 2014 and 2017, but they didn't really expect to go when they did. And when it came to looking after and sorting out their affairs, not only were there their things and their affairs, but they also had my grandmothers and my uncles who died unexpectedly. And I suddenly found myself with it took me about 7 years to actually clear out, because emotionally it can be difficult as well. You've got to give time. But leaving a lot of things for people to have to deal with. I know people say, oh, look, when I'm gone. It'll be somebody else's problem. Actually, that's not a very good thing to do at all.
No, it's not. And I try to frequently sit down with my guys and say, these are where the papers are. This is what has been done. So you don't have to try to figure out what to do. It's been done ahead of time for you already. So I'm really, trying to work with them on understanding the importance of organizing life. So I don't have to leave you stuff that you don't want to have to do, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I move to your other book, which is Rhythms of Rest? Please. And this is beautiful. It's a total change now. This is full of books. Actually, that's where the Yolanda Brown comes from. One of your contributors has that name. You have, various different women, but I loved it because I suddenly realized what I was reading. This was women writing in COVID. And what I noticed with all of the different contributors that you'd gathered together, Marjorie Duncan Reed, Yolanda D. Brown, Greta Franks, Crawford, all these different women are writing with a new depth, you can feel the connection with their writing, because it's as though there's been a shift in all of our consciousness in the pandemic.
Word. And I think so, shift. And for many, this was their first time being a contributing author. So the pure joy that their story and their words could come to life has been so meaningful. So they've almost sold the book, the first printing, out because of their stories and their words coming to life. And so that's such a joy for me.
And the way they were able to link, not just as women writing with a female perspective, but they were able to link important pieces of scripture to what's going on now. And I felt I was reading those pieces of scripture, which I'd read since I was a child. I felt I was reading them with new eyes.
Oh, that's so refreshing to hear. Every time I pick it up, I see their story through new eyes. And what's happening for them is not only are they seeing their story, but they're sharing it with people who would want to know more about them. And so the power of story is so important because it's exponential. I always say 1 and 1 equals 2, except when it's side by side, then it's 11. So you have the multiplying effect through books like this. When you have these contributing authors, you're like, it can touch more than one person at a time. It can touch 11 or 111 or 1,011. And that's what's happening. It's such a joy.
Yeah. And again, you start this book, you're forward with this book, and your conclusion, you bring it full circle with this, because it's about Selah, as you say, pausing.
Yes. Pausing, taking a moment. I mean, the scriptures demand it. You know, David was a psalmist and also a harpist. So he sang and he wrote songs for the king, but he also played his harp. And Selah is a word to not be spoken in scriptures. It means rest. Rest from your singing, rest from your playing. For us, just rest from your working, rest from whatever you're doing, and just reflect on the things that have happened for you. Because sometimes we're such busybodies, we don't take the time to enjoy the moment or the moments that have transpired. Some days we eat so fast, you're like, did I eat today? I mean, so when it gets to that kind of rapidity, it means stop for a minute. You know, we used to say, smell the roses. Well, it's also smell the coffee, and it's about taking a deep breath, and it's about taking a moment to hear yourself and hear your thoughts and hear the divine speaking to you.
And there was a point you made which really made me stop in the with regard to this particular book, Rhythms of Rest, and it was remembering that, and this was apropos of David, you know, your song can be coming to an end.
Yes.
And if that part of your life, if some career, if some part of your life, if the song is coming to an end, you need to stop. You need to assimilate that.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and it's what the scripture writer talks about, seasons. To everything, there's a season. And to know when that season is over, and it's okay. I have one of my friends who's one of the endorsers of the book. She just made 88 years old on October 18th. And she says, you know, sometimes I'm running so fast, she'll say, husband your time, meaning you don't have to run back and forth. Conserve it, you know, so that you can be strong. And then she'll say, you know, you had a great season with that. And she's just reminding me, yeah, I did. And I don't have to keep pushing the envelope and pushing it. There's nothing to prove anymore. And that's the good thing about your 5th chapter. You know, you don't have to prove anything. Be comfortable.
And I agree totally. I am also meeting a lot of women, and I have to confess to this myself. I've gone through phases of trying to draw all the threads together of my life, which I think is a very natural thing to do.
Sure.
But at the same time, you can't hold on to all the threads forever. You've got to let some of them go to move on.
Right. I mean, when you look in your closet, there were clothes, and sometimes clothes come back, the fashion come back. But when you look at them, you have worn them. You have worn them out. And they looked good, and you try to put it back on, and you're like, ooh, no, this goes to Goodwill or to somewhere else. And that's exactly what happens in life. Like, ooh, you've been there, done that, got 2 t-shirts, as we say in America. And so let it go. Enjoy the moment. There's this couple, and I think I referred to them in the 5th chapter, Mel and Ken Blanchard, I believe their names were, but they were restaurateurs in Vermont. But they enjoyed going down to one of the islands, I think it was Antigua or Anguilla. And so they would go and close their restaurant up every year. But then they started opening a restaurant in Anguilla because they said, we really like doing this, but we don't want to lose the business in Vermont. So they trained some people from Anguilla who had never been in snow, never been in cold weather, to run the restaurant in Vermont so that they could have both worlds. But the key was they're living their dream. So they're living in the islands, their businesses are flourishing, but they have created the life they want. And I think that's what the 5th chapter allows you to do. If you have saved well, preserved yourself well, you have health and some wealth and some time on your hands, then create the life you want, you know, enjoy it. Yes, enjoy it.
Yeah. And I know people who are in the 5th chapter. And, you know, this is something I feel that is shared, a point that kept coming to my mind a lot, reading both books. they're in the 5th chapter, and perhaps they don't have a lot of money.
Right.
And they perhaps have relationships that have fallen apart or whatever. And they have this thing that's going on, which is very, very difficult sometimes to a habit that's very difficult to break, where they keep thinking back to their youth instead of thinking about and accepting and being content. Another thing you say, being content with where you are now.
Yes.
They haven't reached that point. So they're looking back to their young life all the time, and they're saying, oh, I should have married that rich farmer, or I should have married that rich business person like my sister did, or whatever. Right. And they wouldn't have been the type of person to be able to do that and make it work. No. It didn't happen for them because it was right that it didn't happen for them. Exactly. And because they're not flourishing now in materialistic terms, somehow they are now stopping themselves from saying, I'm going to be grateful for my life as it is right now. I'm going to allow myself to open those doors so that God, the universe, can send me opportunities. Yeah, and be grateful.
Yeah, rejoice and be glad in the state that you're in. And really thank God that didn't happen, because you probably couldn't handle it, or he or she couldn't have handled it.
Yeah, you could have been dodging a bullet there.
And I say, let the past be the past. I tried to date an old boyfriend. I found a letter with his handwriting, and he was in the next town. And I tried to date him recently. And so I was like, I had in my mind when we were strong bucks, and he came and he looked like, OMG, I should have let that letter stay. And now I'm embarrassed because I have to entertain him the whole night. And I was like, no. So my point, let the past be the past.
Enjoy the past be the past.
And if it didn't work then, just say, thank you, God. I'm okay where I am.
I'm okay where I am. Absolutely. Oh, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I just want to point out to people too, they can actually follow you on your website as well, which is drsujay.live.
.live, because I'm all the way live and in living color. So .live.
You are, and you are president and CEO of Charisma Speaker. So it's absolutely wonderful website. Have a look at it, folks. And really, we are so lucky to have had you today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Absolutely delighted to have you on. And the wisdom, the experience, and the books, folks, please, wonderful presents for Christmas. And if you have girlfriends in particular who are struggling at the moment and need that little bit, these aren't huge, long books. These are very readable, nice size books that you can easily get through in a couple of days, or maybe even less. But the main thing is that they are there to support, to advise, to point you in the right direction, to remind you of the scriptures, to remind you of how giving yourself permission, enjoying the abundance that comes your way, giving yourself that permission without guilt, leaving the past behind. The whole thing, everything is there in those books, the things that we need to think about in our 5th chapter. And
very much
Reverend Dr. Suzan D. Johnson Cook, you know how to communicate, that's for sure. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Miriam. And this is my first time, but I hope it won't be the last. Thank you so much.
I'd love to have you on again.
All right. Have a great one. Great holiday for you.
And to you too. Thank you so much, everybody. Talk to you next week.